Radio Wave Network News.
I'm at the Legal Assistance Centre today chatting to Rachel Coomer about corporal punishment, but not corporal punishment in schools, but a bit more overarching and more specifically corporal punishment in the home. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
The Legal Assistance Centre have sort of published this flyer now promoting alternatives to corporal punishment. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people in Namibia who would say, why?
If in our family setting we have a lot of violence, a lot of aggression, a lot of, stop that clap, and you hit the kid, dude, leave her alone, smack. What are you teaching the kid? You're teaching that child to deal with problems through violence. You're not teaching your child verbal ways to deal with the problem. You're not explaining, you're not discussing. You as a parent are not showing patience. You're not showing that you can control your own temper. And I think when you talk about kids, they have big emotions, and your job as a parent is to try and channel those emotions. And corporal punishment doesn't do that. Corporal punishment just suppresses it and lets it break out. And that's what we teach. And so as a culture, we grow up. And I think lots of people as adults, and it's the immediate response. And so then you say, well, why we have one of the reasons we have such a big GBV problem? Because it's the immediate response, is what we've always known, is how we do this. And so it's about trying to promote a culture of respect, of tolerance, of the best way we talk about the best interests of the child and what's right for a child, and part of that is about how we can discipline them. And when we talk about not using corporal punishment, we don't mean don't use any punishment at all. That would be daft. Kids need to be guided, they need to be shown, they do need discipline, but there are so many, and it's often called positive discipline or respectful discipline. There are so many effective ways of positive discipline.
These new ways take time, but they do work. We have to teach our children to understand what is right and what is wrong, not just how to avoid a beating.
Some of the people obviously, sitting there going, oh, but this is all new age, happy clappy, I was hit as a child and I'm perfectly fine. Or, is there a response to that?
One is to try and say, maybe you're fine, but what about the kid that was beaten to death? And we know that's happened. Unequivocally, there are stories in the newspaper in Namibia and stories in the newspaper across the world. And for me, one of the reasons this is so important is because it can save lives. Even if you and your family think that you are using corporal punishment in what you think is a controlled, effective manner, some people aren't. And I think we need as a nation to say, if we want to protect our children, we all have to do this. So that's one argument. And secondly, you're fine, but things could have been better. Or maybe you think you're fine, but actually your instinctive reaction to something is violence. You think, okay, and so you're not as fine as you think, that actually it's more subliminal, you don't realize. And maybe if you'd been taught to discuss or think or understand things, it could have been even better.
If we want Namibia to be a more peaceful society, we must start by teaching our children different ways to deal with arguments.
People will say, yes, but I'm not that guy or I'm not that woman, and there was always the tradition of wait until your father gets home. So it's not done in anger, and I think a lot of people will defend corporal punishment at home saying they're waiting, they're not lashing out in anger, it's a measured response. But is it a measured response?
First of all, I want to say how many people are waiting. How many people are actually letting let the anger cool down and then disciplining. And then sometimes in a way that becomes an even greater fear hierarchy, power hierarchy. And jumping back to the GBV argument, GBV, a lot of it comes because there's a hierarchy. The one person thinks they're better than the other. It's a power struggle. And it's a mirroring of this corporal punishment of I'm bigger than you, you're going to have to wait, you're going to be afraid, and then mete out the discipline. And the other thing is, if you can sort of sit and wait and say, okay, you're going to have to wait for your punishment and it's going to be a measured response, why can't you just do the positive way, which is going to take just as much time and involve the waiting or this or that? There are better ways. And I think anyone who says it doesn't work, you've got to keep trying. And I think if someone people that use corporal punishment are repeatedly using corporal punishment. So it doesn't really make sense to say, oh, positive discipline doesn't work. We've got to actually have patience and tolerance and just think about how you can positively do that. And I mean, when you start using positive discipline, it's fantastic, because then you start to see the kids enacting it a little bit more. You don't, and the irony is when you use corporal punishment on a kid and then you see your child hit their sister or their brother, you're like, stop that, stop beating your kid. you know, that doesn't even make sense. And yet with positive discipline, when they start using positive measures, that's what you want. So you want to have a discipline that can be replicated.
The alternatives involve more talking, but they will help your children grow up knowing that you do not hit people to solve a problem.
You're not saying don't discipline your kids. There are countless memes on the internet about saying that the current generation's problem is that they have no discipline, or the current generations, well, not that they don't have discipline, but rather that they weren't, and it boils down to the fact that they weren't disciplined in an old school fashion. If modern parents beat their kids, we wouldn't have the problems that we're having. But what you're saying is not don't discipline your kids at all. You're saying use other methods. Just as a couple of examples, you're talking about positive discipline. How would you suggest parents discipline rather than corporal punishment?
I mean, there's multiple ways. It depends on the age of the child, the stage of the child, and even with positive discipline, there's all sorts of debates. You know, some people might say, you know, I want to use timeouts. Other people might say, oh, I don't. Even that's not. You know, but there are you could try and use timeout. A lot of things is about explaining the problem. Why is it just you know, you don't have to use violence. You could just sit your child and talk to your child and say, look, this is a problem, and explaining it. Sometimes actually there's a lot of benefit to actually not having to do the punishment straight away and just talking about it. The kid knows that they've done wrong, and you just need to explain it, making right the problem. So whether they've, you know, made a mess or something, they've got to pick it all up. Taking away rewards or pleasures. No, you can't watch TV tonight. When you're older, you can't go to the cinema. You know, there's loads of ways, and I think there's a lot of information on the internet, a lot of blogs, a lot of information where people give ideas and tips, and a lot of it really boils down to patience and respect, and just trying to work with the child through the emotions and saying, okay, how can we do this better? What was wrong? And talking through, and basically parenting's about time. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's about the time, being there with the kids, working with them, helping them deal with their big emotions.
So, you have nothing to lose by trying something new.